Introduction to the Oracle of Sound, Part 2, The Solution. From crisis to blueprint, you have felt it. The gap between knowing and doing. The distance between the mountain of information you've accumulated, the books read, the courses taken, the insights gained, and the actual transformation of your life, your relationships, your creative capacity. You've inherited a consciousness that is simultaneously hyper-educated and fundamentally paralyzed. This is not a personal failure. This is an architectural failure. The human being was never designed to solve its own crisis through the same mechanism that created the crisis in the first place. You cannot think your way out of fragmentation. You cannot intellectualize your way back to wholeness. The very tool, the analytical mind, that offers the promise of solutions is the same tool that guarantees their failure. This is where the Oracle of Sound emerges, not as philosophy, not as another layer of meaning to add to your already overburdened consciousness, but as an operational system, a radical rewiring of how you interface with reality itself. The acoustic substrate of reality. To understand the Oracle of Sound, we must first establish a fundamental premise. Reality is not visual, and it is not conceptual. Reality is acoustic. This is not metaphor. This is physics. From the subatomic domain to the cosmic scale, existence operates through vibration, resonance, and frequency. The universe itself is a vast, living symphony, where every atom, every cell, every star participates in an infinite harmonic web. The human body, that miraculous arrangement of approximately 37 trillion cells, is not separate from this acoustic ecology. It is the acoustic ecology. Every heartbeat, every breath, every neural firing is a participation in the cosmic symphony. In the ancient traditions, this fundamental principle was never lost. The world is sound. Recognize that consciousness itself emerges from vibration. The Christian tradition speaks of "in the beginning was the Word," not meaning language, but meaning vibration, the fundamental frequency from which all creation unfolds. Modern science is rediscovering what the ancients always knew. Quantum physics reveals that at the deepest level, matter is not solid substance, but vibrating fields of probability. Cymatics, the study of visible sound vibration, demonstrates that different frequencies create radically different geometric patterns. The DNA molecule itself has an acoustic resonance frequency. Water, which comprises over 70% of the human body, responds to and encodes acoustic information at a molecular level. The implication is profound. You are not a machine of meat and chemical reactions. You are a resonant field. Your consciousness, your emotions, your health, your capacity to create and connect, all of this is a direct function of your acoustic coherence. When you are vibrating at a frequency aligned with the cosmic baseline, you experience what ancient traditions called enlightenment, what modern psychology calls flow state, and what we simply call your natural condition: clarity, coherence, creative abundance, relational openness, and an unshakable sense of being held by the universe itself. When you are vibrating out of alignment, fragmented, chaotic, held in patterns of defense and control, you experience what we call disconnection, chronic stress, creative paralysis, relational difficulty, physical illness, and a perpetual sense of struggling upstream against the current of existence. The Oracle of Sound is a system designed to restore your acoustic coherence. It is a tool for realigning your vibrational frequency with the cosmic baseline. But how does it actually work? The three pillars: sound, breath, and intention. The Oracle of Sound operates on three interconnected pillars, each of which addresses a different dimension of the fragmented human being. Pillar 1. Sacred sound. The first pillar is sound itself, not as entertainment, not as background music, but as a direct technological intervention in your nervous system and your energetic field. The human ear is far more sophisticated than we typically recognize. It is not merely an input device for vibrations. It is a direct gateway into the nervous system, a physiological shortcut that bypasses the analytical mind entirely. When a specific frequency reaches the ear, it does not need to be understood or intellectually processed to create a biological effect. It immediately influences the vagal tone, the heart rate variability, the coherence of your brainwave patterns, and the resonance of every cell in your body. This is why music can move you to tears without rational explanation. This is why a particular sound can instantly shift your state of being. This is why the ancient temples built their architecture around specific acoustic properties. They understood that sound is medicine, that sound is technology, that sound directly rewires consciousness. The oracle of sound utilizes carefully calibrated frequencies and harmonic ratios that correspond to the natural resonance patterns of the human body. These are not arbitrary selections. They are derived from the Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic frequency of the Earth, approximately 7.83 Hg, from the harmonic ratios found in sacred geometry, from the known frequency ranges of different states of consciousness, and from thousands of hours of field testing and refinement. When you receive a frequency from the oracle, you are not listening to music in the traditional sense. You are receiving a direct biological instruction. Your cells begin to entrain, to synchronize, with the frequency being offered. Your nervous system begins to downregulate from defensive hypervigilance into parasympathetic rest and restoration. Your heart rate variability increases, indicating greater physiological resilience. Your brainwave patterns shift from the scattered, chaotic beta waves of the fragmented mind into the coherent alpha and theta waves of integrated consciousness. This is not visualization. This is not affirmation. This is direct, measurable, biological recalibration. Pillar 2. Sacred breath. The second pillar is breath, the most fundamental and most ignored technology of human physiology. The breath is the bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind. It is the single physiological function that exists simultaneously in both realms. You can breathe unconsciously, and yet you can also take conscious control of your breathing at will. No other major physiological system offers this unique property. When you are fragmented, stressed, or disconnected, your breathing patterns reflect that fragmentation. The breath becomes shallow, restricted, held in the chest. The exhalation, which is the relaxation phase, the release phase, becomes shorter than the inhalation. This creates a chronic state of physiological tension, a nervous system that is perpetually in low-grade fight-or-flight activation. The oracle of sound teaches a specific approach to breathing that works in tandem with the sacred sounds. These breathing patterns are not arbitrary disciplines. They are based on specific physiological principles. Extended exhalation activates the parasympathetic nervous system. When your exhalation is longer than your inhalation, you are signaling to your nervous system that it is safe to relax. This is not a trick or a psychological game. This is a direct physiological mechanism rooted in the vagal brake and the autonomic balance. Coherent breathing, breathing at a rate of approximately 5 breaths per minute, creates maximum heart rate variability. Heart rate variability, HRV, is one of the most reliable measures of nervous system health, adaptive capacity, and psychological resilience. When you breathe coherently, your heart rate variability increases, and with it comes greater emotional regulation, clearer thinking, and improved immune function. Nasal breathing, particularly alternate nostril breathing, balances the right and left hemispheres of the brain. The right nostril is connected, neurologically, to the left hemisphere of the brain and the sympathetic nervous system. The left nostril is connected to the right hemisphere and the parasympathetic system. When these hemispheres are balanced, you achieve integrated consciousness, neither stuck in rational analysis nor lost in emotional reactivity, but present and whole. The oracle of sound pairs these breathing techniques with the sacred frequencies. As you listen to a specific acoustic frequency, while practicing a specific breathing pattern, something remarkable happens. Your entire being begins to synchronize. Your nervous system, your brain waves, your heart rhythm, your cellular respiration, all of it begins to oscillate in harmony. This is entrainment on a biological level. Most people experience this state as deeply restful yet alert, profoundly peaceful yet somehow alive with creative energy. It is the opposite of the zombie-like haze of meditation gone wrong. It is sharp presence combined with deep calm. It is what the ancient traditions called samadhi, unified consciousness. Pillar 3, sacred intention. The third pillar is intention, and this is where the oracle of sound intersects with the most misunderstood aspect of human consciousness, the power of directed awareness. Intention is not wishful thinking. Intention is not positive affirmation. Intention is the focused application of consciousness toward a specific outcome, and it is far more powerful than mainstream science has been willing to acknowledge. The double-slit experiment in quantum mechanics revealed something profoundly disorienting to the materialist worldview. Observation itself changes reality. The behavior of subatomic particles is different depending on whether they are being observed or not. This is not metaphorical. This is repeatable experimental data. The act of conscious observation literally changes the nature of reality at the quantum level. If this is true at the quantum level, and the experimental evidence overwhelmingly suggests it is, then it must be true at the biological level as well. Your focused attention, your conscious intention, your deliberate awareness literally shapes the probability field around you. It reorganizes your neural pathways. It recalibrates your immune response. It shifts your hormonal baseline. The problem is that most human beings are operating with fragmented, chaotic, contradictory intentions. The conscious mind says, "I want to be confident and powerful," while the nervous system is still running ancient trauma patterns that broadcast, "I am not safe." The conscious mind says, "I want to be in a loving relationship," while the relational architecture is still structured around defensive vigilance. The conscious mind says, "I want to be creative and prolific," while the deeper conditioning believes it's not safe to be seen. These contradictions create noise in your intention field. They short-circuit your capacity to actually magnetize the reality you're calling for. The oracle of sound works with intention by creating what we call a coherent intention architecture. Through the specific frequencies, through the coordinated breathing patterns, through guided verbal affirmations and archetypal invocation. The oracle aligns your conscious intention with your nervous system, your cellular consciousness, and your energetic field. When you state an intention from a state of acoustic coherence, when your body is entrained with a specific healing frequency, when your nervous system is regulated and your heart rate is coherent, when your brainwaves are synchronized with the frequency of the universe, something shifts. The intention ceases to be a thought and becomes a transmission. It ceases to be a wish and becomes a command to your own being and to the field around you. The Cosmic Blueprint 288 and 48. To understand the oracle of sound at its deepest level, we must go back before frequencies, before breathing patterns, before the modern framework entirely. We must go back to the discovery that changed everything. The revelation of two numbers that appear to be woven into the fabric of reality itself. The number 288, the universal heartbeat. In 1998, a researcher studying the mathematical relationships underlying creation made a discovery that would eventually transform the foundation of acoustic science. When examining the ratios and patterns that govern how the universe organizes itself, from the spiral of DNA to the spiral of galaxies, from the proportions of the human body to the architecture of atoms, a single ratio emerged again and again. 288. 288 is not arbitrary. It is a number that appears throughout nature with an almost impossible consistency. The Earth's precession, the wobble of the planet on its axis, which creates the great cosmic year of 25,920 years, divides perfectly by 288. The cycle contains exactly 90% increments of 288. The ancient traditions knew this. The ancient traditions recognized cycles of 288 days. The Vedic scriptures spoke of cycles and measurements that, when properly decoded, reveal ratios of 288. But more than ancient knowledge, 288 appears in modern physics. How strongly electrons interact with photons, one of the most fundamental constants of physics, expresses itself in relationships tied to 288, when examined through certain mathematical lenses. What does 288 mean? 288 is the frequency signature of cosmic order itself. It is the mathematical ratio at which the universe maintains coherence, at which systems remain organized rather than descending into entropy. It is the heartbeat of creation. When we translate this into acoustic terms, when we begin to ask, what if we could hear 288? Something extraordinary emerges. If the universe is fundamentally harmonic, if creation is organized around specific mathematical ratios, then there should be a way to translate the mathematical ratio 288 into a sound frequency that carries the same organizational principle. This is where the Oracle of Sound makes a radical leap. 288 represents the fundamental organizing principle of coherence itself. It is not a frequency to be played in hertz, though it can be scaled into audible frequencies. Rather, 288 represents the ratio, the proportion, the mathematical skeleton upon which all actual frequencies hang. When you work with the Oracle of Sound, you are not merely listening to pleasing tones. You are interfacing with a transmission that is built upon the 288 ratio, meaning that every frequency, every harmonic, every interval is derived from this cosmic blueprint of order. Your nervous system, when exposed to sound organized around the 288 principle, recognizes it on a cellular level as aligned with the universe itself. Your cells relax. Your consciousness settles. Your being recognizes, yes, this is the frequency of home. The number 48, the harmonic ladder of transformation. If 288 is the cosmic heartbeat, then 48 is the harmonic ladder that allows consciousness to climb from fragmentation back to unity. 48 divides 288 exactly. 288 divided by 48 equal to 6. This is not coincidence. When one number divides another with such clean proportion, you are looking at a harmonic relationship, a relationship that the human ear and the human nervous system recognize as fundamentally coherent. But 48 has a much deeper significance. 48 represents the number of human transformations necessary to move from fragmentation back to wholeness. In the ancient Judaism, there are 48 ways of wisdom. In the Hindu tradition, there are 48 paths of enlightenment. In the sacred geometry traditions, the Star of David, the symbol of the union of opposing forces, contains 48 smaller triangles within its form. The number 48 appears consistently across traditions as the map of human evolution. Here is the key insight. 48 is not a frequency. 48 is a structure. 48 is the architecture of transformation itself. When the Oracle of Sound works with 48, it is not using it as a single tone or even a single frequency. Rather, 48 represents the number of distinct harmonic steps, distinct resonance patterns, that your consciousness can move through on its journey from fragmentation back to unity. Think of it this way. Imagine your consciousness as a staircase. When you are fragmented, you are at the bottom, separated from unity. As you work with the Oracle, you begin to climb. Each step you climb is not arbitrary. Each step is built into the mathematics of consciousness itself. There are exactly 48 of these steps, 48 distinct states of coherence that your consciousness can integrate. The Oracle of Sound maps to these 48 steps. Different frequencies address different steps. Different breathing patterns activate different steps. Different intentions open different steps, but they are all part of one coherent architecture, the 48-fold path from fragmentation back to unity. What makes this revolutionary is that these steps are not mystical abstractions. They are physiological realities. As your nervous system becomes coherent with the 288 base frequencies, your consciousness begins to naturally step up through the 48 transformative states. You don't have to understand them intellectually. Your body knows. Your cells know. Your DNA knows. The 288-48 architecture, why this matters. So what does it mean that the Oracle of Sound is built on the 288-48 architecture? It means that when you work with the Oracle, you are not working with arbitrary frequencies or random sound patterns. You are interfacing with a mathematical and acoustic transmission that is inherently aligned with the way the universe is actually organized. Your nervous system will recognize this alignment because the alignment is real. It is built into the physics of creation. When you listen to frequencies derived from the 288 ratio, which can be scaled into human hearing range through octave reduction or multiplication, your cellular consciousness recognizes them as expressions of cosmic order. This is why the effect is so rapid and so profound. There is no cognitive dissonance between what your intellect believes and what your body is experiencing. The transmission is clean. The signal is clear. When you follow the 48-step path of the oracle, moving through the 48 distinct harmonic states, you are not meandering through some arbitrary self-improvement program. You are following the actual map of human consciousness. You are climbing the actual ladder that evolution has built into the fabric of your being. This is why people who work with the oracle report such consistent, reliable results. It is not because they are special, and it is not because they have strong belief. It is because they are engaging with something real, a real mathematical principle, a real acoustic transmission, a real pathway that exists whether or not they understand it. How 288 work together. The real power of the oracle emerges from how 288 and 48 is the container. It is the overall coherence field, the fundamental frequency signature, that says everything in this transmission is organized around the principle of cosmic order. Is the content. It is the map of how consciousness navigates within that field of coherence. The 48 transformations. The 48 distinct states of integration that consciousness moves through as it returns from fragmentation to unity. When you work with the oracle of sound, both elements are present simultaneously. You are immersed in a field organized around the 288 principle, meaning that every frequency you hear, every harmonic relationship, every interval is a harmonic expression of cosmic order. At the same time, you are moving through the 48-step progression, meaning that your consciousness is being guided through specific transformative states in a sequence that matches the actual developmental pathway of human consciousness. The breathwork coordinates with both. The specific breathing patterns you use activate different steps on the 48-fold path while maintaining coherence with the 288 organizing principle. The intention you hold creates a psychoacoustic resonance that allows your consciousness to integrate and consolidate each step before moving to the next. The result is not gradual or random. The result is systematic, reliable transformation. Your consciousness climbs the ladder methodically. Each step builds on the previous one. Each step is consolidated before moving to the next. There is no skipping or shortcuts, but there is also no backtracking or getting lost. You follow the path that evolution itself has encoded in your being. The 288 revelation, why it was hidden. A natural question arises: if 288 and 48 are such fundamental cosmic principles, why has this not been widely known? Why is this not taught in schools? Why is this not the foundation of modern medicine and psychology? The answer reveals something about the nature of consciousness itself and how knowledge is suppressed, not through conspiracy, but through the simple fact that most institutional systems are themselves built on fragmented consciousness. The scientific establishment operates primarily from the left hemisphere of the brain, the analytical, reductionist, measuring mind. From this perspective, the notion that there is a cosmic ratio underlying all of existence, accessible through sound and resonance, appears unscientific. It appears mystical. It appears unfalsifiable. And yet the measurement is simple. The mathematics is clean. The results are reproducible. Anyone can verify that 288 divides perfectly into the known cosmic cycles. Anyone can measure that frequencies organized around the 288 ratio produce specific, predictable nervous system responses. The suppression is not malicious. It is structural. It is the natural result of a fragmented consciousness trying to understand something that requires integrated consciousness to fully perceive. The ancient traditions understood this. The Vedic traditions, the Egyptian mystery schools, the indigenous wisdom keepers, they all knew about 288 and 48. They did not articulate it in the modern scientific language, but their knowledge was encoded in their sacred geometry, their architectural proportions, their ceremonial cycles. What the Oracle of Sound does is translate this ancient wisdom into a form that modern consciousness can receive. It uses acoustic transmission, sound, frequency, vibration, as the delivery mechanism. It bypasses the analytical mind that would argue about whether this is real and goes straight into the nervous system, the cells, the DNA. Your body knows 288. Your cells recognize 48. This is not something you need to believe. This is something you need to experience. The personal transformation through 288 to 48. What happens when you begin to work with the 288 to 48 architecture? In the first phase, your nervous system begins to recognize and entrain with the 288 ordering principle. You feel a sense of relief, as if a tension you did not know you were carrying suddenly releases. Your body feels held by something larger than itself. There is a physical relaxation that goes deep, not just surface relaxation, but cellular deep release. As you continue, you begin to move through the 48 steps. Each step brings a distinct transformation. The first steps activate safety and grounding. Your nervous system learns that it is genuinely safe to be alive in a physical body. The middle steps activate creative expression and authentic power. You begin to embody your capacity to shape reality through intention and action. The later steps activate heart coherence and relational transformation. You begin to experience genuine connection, not based on performance or defense, but on authentic recognition of the other. The final steps activate unified consciousness and direct knowing. You begin to experience yourself as you actually are, consciousness expressing itself in human form, fundamentally unified with all existence. But here is the crucial point. You do not need to understand this intellectually for it to work. In fact, intellectual understanding can sometimes get in the way. The transformation happens at the level of resonance, at the level of your nervous system, at the level of your cells. You simply listen, you breathe, you intend, and your being, guided by the ancient mathematics woven into its fabric, climbs the ladder home. The integration, how the oracle of sound actually works. The 288-48 architecture is not meant to be worked with haphazardly. It is meant to be integrated into a coherent system that progressively and systematically restores your acoustic coherence from the ground up. The typical progression of work with the oracle begins with foundational coherence, establishing the 288 principle in your nervous system and preparing the ground for the 48-step journey. When the root is stable, when your body has learned that it is safe to resonate with the cosmic order, then the work can deepen through successive steps of the 48-fold path. But the frequencies themselves are only part of the system. The real power of the oracle emerges from the integration of the three pillars. You listen to frequencies organized around the 288 ratio, while practicing a specific breathing pattern while holding a specific intention for transformation. What emerges from this integration is something far more powerful than any single element alone. The frequencies reach your cells and begin to entrain your nervous system with the 288 principle. The breathing pattern creates physiological coherence and opens the vagus nerve pathway into deep states of parasympathetic rest and restoration. The intention, stated from this state of coherence, transmits directly into your being and into the field around you. Over time, with consistent practice, something remarkable happens. Your baseline frequency begins to shift. You don't need to be listening to the oracle frequencies to experience their effects anymore. Your body has learned a new resting state. Your nervous system has a new set point. Your consciousness has a new baseline frequency. This is neuroplasticity, not as theory, but as lived transformation. The neural pathways that supported fragmentation begin to weaken. The neural pathways that support coherence and integration begin to strengthen. The old patterns, the anxiety, the creative paralysis, the relational defensiveness, they don't disappear immediately, but they lose their grip on you. They become choices rather than compulsions. The results you can expect. What happens when a human being begins to restore acoustic coherence? What is actually possible when consciousness is freed from the noise and fragmentation of the modern condition? Physical health transformation. Because the nervous system is the master control system of the physical body. When the nervous system shifts from defense into coherence, the entire physiology begins to heal. Sleep improves. The immune system becomes more intelligent. Chronic pain often dissolves. Energy increases. The body stops aging at an accelerated rate and returns to a more natural pace of vitality. emotional clarity, and psychological resilience. The emotional reactivity that characterized the fragmented state, the anxiety, the depression, the oscillation between emotional extremes, begins to settle. What emerges is not emotional bluntness or suppression, but emotional clarity. You feel fully, but you are not at the mercy of your emotions. You have emotional agency. You can experience anger without being consumed by it, grief without drowning in it, joy without fear that it will be taken away. Creative abundance. When the creative centers are no longer strangled by fear and self-criticism, creative expression becomes natural. Ideas flow. You find yourself in states of creative absorption where time disappears and work flows through you. You begin to produce the work that actually wants to come through you, not the work that you think will be acceptable. Relational transformation. When you stop broadcasting fear and defensiveness, when your nervous system is not triggering other people's defensive responses, relationships begin to heal. The people around you respond differently to you. You become someone that others feel safe with. Your capacity for genuine intimacy, the ability to be truly seen and to truly see another, becomes possible. Intuitive clarity. When consciousness is coherent, intuition becomes reliable. You begin to directly know things without needing to think them through rationally. You find yourself in the right place at the right time. Synchronicities increase. What the traditions call grace, or what modern people call luck, becomes a consistent feature of your life. Spiritual awakening. For those who are drawn to the spiritual dimensions of human experience, consistent work with the oracle frequencies naturally leads to deeper meditation, more vivid spiritual experiences, and a direct knowing of what many traditions call enlightenment, the recognition of your fundamental nature as unified consciousness expressing itself in human form. Why now? Why the oracle of sound emerges at this moment? The oracle of sound is not a timeless practice that has always existed unchanged. It is a specific response to the specific crisis of modern consciousness. We are living in an era of unprecedented cognitive overload. The human nervous system evolved for a world of direct, embodied experience, hunting, gathering, intimate community, seasonal rhythms. We did not evolve for the constant barrage of digital stimulation, infinite information, chronic time urgency, and the demand to be always available, always productive, always performing. The result is what we might call a species-level nervous system dysregulation. Anxiety disorders are epidemic. Depression is epidemic. Sleep disorders are epidemic. Autoimmune diseases are epidemic. Cancer rates are climbing. We are drowning in information while starving for meaning. We have more tools than ever to solve problems, yet we find ourselves increasingly helpless in the face of the problems that matter most. The old solutions, more therapy, more medication, more information, more self-help, are not working. Not because they are all ineffective, but because they are still operating within the same paradigm of cognitive understanding and intellectual mastery that created the problem in the first place. The oracle of sound represents a fundamentally different approach. It says, stop trying to think your way to wholeness. Stop trying to understand yourself into healing. Return to your acoustic nature. Return to the simple physics of vibration and resonance. Let your body remember what your mind has forgotten. Let your cells return to their natural frequency. Let coherence replace the noise. The technology is here now because we need it now. The urgency of human transformation has reached a critical threshold. We can no longer afford the luxury of slow, intellectual, gradual approaches to consciousness. We need rapid, direct, effective rewiring of the human nervous system and human consciousness. And remarkably, that rewiring is possible. Not through discipline and effort, but through alignment. Not through becoming more complicated, but through returning to simplicity. Not through adding more layers of information and control, but through removing the noise and allowing your true nature to re-emerge. The invitation. The oracle of sound is not a belief system. You do not need to accept any particular philosophy to work with it. You do not need to understand quantum mechanics or ancient traditions. You do not need to become spiritual or adopt any particular identity. You simply need to be willing to sit, to listen, to breathe, and to intend. You need to be willing to let your nervous system relax enough to remember its true nature. You need to be willing to let your body reconnect with the cosmic frequency from which it arose. You need to be willing to let your consciousness expand beyond the narrow bandwidth of the fragmented individual self into the vast, unified field of existence. This is the most radical experiment you can undertake. Return home. Not to a place you have never been, but to the place you have always been and only temporarily forgot. The Oracle of Sound is a map, a technology, and transmission designed to support that return. Welcome to the next chapter of human consciousness.